In 2013, I coined the name Grampian, and I gave it to your host, Jim Tracy.
All right, welcome Grampian Nation. Here we are back with another one. I'm so excited to be doing full podcasts again, man. The holiday season is wonderful, but it actually puts a big dent in your podcast schedule. So here we are again, Grandpa Chats with Champions. And what I love about this is that all ages, sizes, occupations, avocations, they all have people that do good. And when those people come on board, they tell you, our audience, how they inspire people. And because a lot of times they inspire people just to be elite at something. And it is incredibly gratifying for both. I mean, if you were an athlete, it's gratifying for the athlete and the coach to be elite at something. So go be a mentor, go be a coach, go be excellent at something, and then go inspire someone. And you too can be a champion. And then you can come on the Grampian with me. So our guest today, I got to tell you a little story first. I looked at my social media platform, which I'm not very good at social media, but I got a lot of cool people that help me. But it's minus 9 degrees where he is in we'll just say the Windy City, and minus 9 degrees, and there's a photo of him alone at the gym, and he's kind of reaching out to all the young people, and he's throwing down the gauntlet saying, hey, the old guys are here, where are all the young people? It's not that cold. And so I was inspired by that, but his story is obviously a lot bigger. I would like you to give a big welcome to my friend Steve Wilder. Wilder. You are Wilder, man. How are you?
Baby, I'm wilder than anything you've ever met.
Welcome to the Grampian, brother.
Thanks, Jim. It's good to see you, man. It always is.
Well, of course it is. I'm bald. I have a goatee, a gray goatee. You're bald. You got a great. I mean, this is like looking in the mirror, man.
We met at the barber shop. I tell people that all the time.
Best barber I ever met. Just go
right.
like this. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So, Steve, you're a trainer. You do lots of different stuff with lots of different industries, but that's not where you grew up. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in basically I had two careers that ran parallel. And I guess I got to go back a little bit in history. When I was a little boy of about 5 or 6 years old, I can remember vividly being with my dad in his pickup truck. And I think he had, at that time, it was a 1954 Chevy pickup truck.
Nice. At least
and we were going down one of the streets in town. And as we passed the local fire station, the garage doors were open. And I had never seen a fire truck before. And I asked Dad if we could stop and look at the fire trucks, and we did. And he stood me up on the tailboard of this old fire truck. And I don't know what happened, but something bit me. And I knew that day that I wanted to be a firefighter. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, and it really was. And that was something that just stayed with me forever. Then in the early 1970s, there was a TV show came on called Emergency. Johnny Gage and Roy DeSoto.
There you go. Coolest two guys on the planet.
I would not miss that show for anything. And that bug just bit me and stayed with me. So when I was 13 years old, I got into a cadet program here in my hometown. Now I'm about 45 miles south of Chicago. I'm still in the same town I grew up in. I never had a reason to leave. But when I was 13, I got into the cadet program, stayed with that until I was about 15 or 16. Got out of it for a short period of time, missed it immensely. And so when I was 18, I joined what was then the local volunteer fire department. It was a small town at that time. It was a small town department, volunteer department. So I joined that and started doing that at 18 years old. But at the same time, I knew I needed a big boy job as well to be able to support myself. I was going to school. I got married young. I got married at 19, 20 years old and started a family. So I needed a big boy job. So I went into I started in banking, but I didn't like that. I only stayed in that for a year and a half or so. And then I got into healthcare safety. And I started doing healthcare safety work at the local hospital, same hospital I was actually born in. And I actually stayed with them for 15 years at the hospital. I was hired as the director of safety and security at 23 years old. And then after about a year and a half, I was asked if I would develop a risk management program and a risk management department for the hospital. So I took that on. So I was risk management director there for 15 years. And then as hospitals became part of bigger healthcare systems, ours did the same. And I was moved to the corporate office. And I was the corporate director of risk management over our long-term care division, which at that time was, I think, 15 retirement facilities. I was corporate director of risk management over those 15 facilities. Held that position for about 4 years, and then stayed. Then I was moved into a new position, Jim, as the director of safety and security over 10 hospitals and 15 retirement places. Stayed with that for a year or so. Had 20 years in there. Thought I was a sacred cow. Thought I'd be there forever, but sometimes the best laid plans. But we had a new CEO came in and thought we were too top heavy, and I was one of 29 corporate executives who was downsized out of the organization. Throughout that entire time, though, I was also working actively in the fire service. Our department, as the town grew, we started working part-time shifts, so I'd pick up 3 or 4 part-time shifts a week at the station. In 1987, I had an opportunity. My passion has always been training, and you know, obviously with what our company does now, as we'll talk about, my passion has always been training. And I love training firefighters. I love sharing the knowledge. I love seeing that light go on in their eyes when they realize it. I love seeing the look of satisfaction in their face when they actually do it and do it right with their hands. And
For sure.
yeah, so I had an opportunity to take a part-time position as an instructor at the State Fire Academy at the University of Illinois. And I ended up staying with the University of Illinois part-time at the academy for 25 years. As the department was growing, I was growing with it. I grew in rank. Started out, I was an 18-year-old rookie firefighter, but over the years, I went through every rank in the department, lieutenant, or started out with engineer, lieutenant, captain, deputy chief, and in 2000, I was appointed fire chief by the city council, and held that job for 8 years. But unfortunately, as the department grew, and my role as fire chief at that time was part-time, but it needed to be full-time. And I knew that, but we had started our own company by then. And I was just at a point I could no longer serve 2 masters.
Yeah.
So I had served the department for 31 years. And as much as I hated to, it was time to step down, put all my focus, everything that we owned was invested in this company. And that needed my attention. So I stepped down, left the department after 31 years, 27 of them as a paramedic. But I continued to teach for a few more years at the academy. So I taught 4 more years at the academy. I left there in 2012, and probably realistically, the only reason that I left there was because the university became a client of ours, and that because couldn't have that conflict of interest, even though it had nothing to do with the fire academy. We were actually working with the airport at the university, doing safety and security stuff for them, but it was still the fact that I was an employee of the university. I had to step down from that position in order to be able to service them as a client.
So this brings up just like a ton of interesting lessons. And the first one that comes to mind is do you know what happens to sacred cows?
Yeah, they become somebody's steak dinner.
Hamburger.
Yep.
They're usually too old for steak, so they become hamburger. Yeah.
So, and you know what? I can't say anything bad about them, Jim. Of course, I try to never say anything bad. I try to find good in everything. But I can't say anything bad about them. It was a faith-based organization. They treated me like a 20-year guy.
Yeah.
They knew at that point that my business partner, Chris Sorensen, and I were wanting to start a consulting practice. And so part of my separation package, they set me up with a company in Chicago that worked with small business startups. Nice. And they helped us get going. I mean, we started it at my kitchen table. I was the only full time. Chris was doing a little bit of part time, but he was still working full time. But we started in 2001. By 2004, we were able to hire a secretary, and things were growing. Chris came on full time in 2006. We restructured, formed a couple other small companies that have grown today that you're obviously familiar with. So if it weren't for them, I wouldn't be here. They
So,
gave me the foundation to build on.
yeah, so the number of hats that you've worn is part of the reason you're here today. If you look at the the broad spectrum of stuff that you've done just across the early part of your career, you've already defined that you were a risk manager. You've already
Mhm.
defined that you were a firefighter. You've already defined that you worked for volunteer businesses, big businesses, corporate entities, and it is and a trainer, and now a CEO. I mean, you've kind of done it all. So let's dive back. The firehouse is what fascinates people, and it's what people, frankly, are reliant upon wholly. Because when you need a fireman, man, and you pick up the phone, what happens?
They're there.
That fireman comes, and everybody's happy to see him.
Yep. And yeah, and that's so true. And I've been again so many blessings.
Yeah.
My sons both became firefighters. They are
Really?
fourth generation. Their grandfather on my wife's side was a fire chief, and his father was a fire chief in Central Illinois. So
Wow.
they're fourth generation, and I'm really proud of them. But yeah, years ago when I was young, I saw, I don't remember where, but I saw a plaque or a sign or something somewhere that said, "What a person does for themselves dies when they die, but
Yeah.
what a person does for their community lives forever."
Yeah.
And I wanted to do something. I feel if every one of us would do something for our communities, it'd be so much better. Give
Accurate, man.
give something.
Totally accurate.
Volunteer. I don't care if you're just helping out with the local parade. Do something. Volunteer. Help your community out.
Yeah. Go shovel the elderly
Yeah,
neighbor sidewalk. I mean,
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. So you're right. I've worn a lot of hats. I'm a man of very strong faith, and God blessed me with the ability to wear multiple hats and shuffle multiple decks of cards at the same time.
Right on. That's so cool. So, if you go back to Firehouse, as you're aware, I'm in my book is about building men, and it's at the editors right now. But what struggles did you have at the Firehouse when you were there? It was really male dominated, or only men, probably. Um, what struggles did you have when you think about building a team, building men in the Firehouse?
Um, it takes a special breed of person to do what a firefighter does. I mean, you're literally when you're going into a fire building, you're going into a building that the rats and the cockroaches are running out of. So it takes a special breed. And when the young guys would come in, I always wanted them to realize that there's guys in the fire service, we call them mimas. And what that means is they get hired at the fire department. They are there for a job. They
Uh,
don't put anything extra into it. They do enough to get by. And rather than be the best that they can be, they just like to put on their fireman costume and say, "Hey, I'm a fireman. Look at me, Ma."
oh wow!
I
Look at
didn't
me,
want,
ma.
yeah, I didn't want Mimas. I wanted guys that were going to be the
Yeah.
best they could be. And so you really try starting with them young, instilling that, the value of training, the value of service. It's sometimes hard, especially on the younger guys,
Yeah.
because you're going into people's homes and you're seeing them at a time when they didn't have time to tidy up the house.
Yeah.
They didn't have time to do their hair, to put on makeup, or to put on nice clothes. You're seeing them as they really live,
Yeah. Vulnerable
and
too.
vulnerable as could be. And it's important to remind those young guys starting out, especially, and I'm saying guys purposely right now,
Yeah.
those young guys starting out, that our job's not to judge, our job is to serve.
Yeah.
And no
And
matter
back in the
how,
day, I mean, they didn't allow women to. I mean,
no,
people slept at the firehouse, so there weren't any categorically occupations available for a woman at the
yeah,
firehouse.
other than clerical,
Yeah,
that was about it. Clerical or dispatchers, telecommunicators.
dispatch, and
But
they're better dispatchers anyway.
yeah, they are. Um, I can remember when we started hiring women, and it, the first female firefighter that my department hired, she was just awesome. She was fantastic. She was a good medic. She was a good firefighter. She carried her weight.
Yeah,
She really sold me that this is not the boys' club.
yeah,
And I can remember, teaching when I was teaching at the academy. A lot of that, there's a beautiful facility at the University of Illinois if you ever get to visit it for the fire service. But it's got multiple buildings on the campus that are built strictly to light fires and fight fires in, so you can do hands-on training.
yeah.
And I can remember her being on a rig, pulling up in front of the fire building. She gets off, goes around back, steps up on the tailboard to grab the hose, steps off the tailboard, falls down on her keister, and is looking up at that truck and gives it the family-friendly middle finger salute, gets back on the truck and says, "Start over." And she was not giving up until she got
Wow.
every step right. And that just impressed me to death. And I realized that it doesn't matter what gender or person, it's what's in their heart.
Yep.
And in her heart, she was going to be the best she could be. She may not have been the best as the guy next to her. She may not have been the best as the person following her, but she
Right.
was going to be the best that she could be. And I got so much respect for that. And as women became more and more dominant in the fire service and more present, they're fantastic. They've got a place. I don't care what anybody says.
Yep. There you go. So, what are some of the best firehouse cooking stories you have? Because everybody, I mean, when you spend enough time at a firehouse, you realize that you got to eat whatever slop that person throws in front of you. But sometimes they get pretty good. You got a good firehouse cooking stories?
Probably the best one I would use is my son. Um, he worked part-time at our department, full-time at another department, about 30 miles from here. Well, everybody has chores in a
Mhm.
firehouse. If you're the cook, that's your job. You cook.
Yeah.
You don't have to do the cleanup. There's other people who do that most of the time. You don't have to go out and swab a mop on the floor. You don't have to scrub toilets. Your job is to cook. So I think he liked that, not having to scrub toilets. So he offered to be the cook. And he started studying cooking. And he became really good with anything to do with barbecue.
Oh, wow.
And before long, their department had bought a really nice barbecue pit for out and back. And they're eating some form of barbecue, whether it's pork, brisket, chicken, whatever, just about every shift that he works.
Oh, yeah.
And so he's cooking all three meals, and he fell so in love with it that he bought a portable pit of his own, and he started doing little side jobs. And before long, their fire chief was calling him to cater an event, and the event was attended by the county board chairman. Then the county board chairman is calling him to start catering their events, and he ended up after a couple of years doing it that way, opening a barbecue restaurant.
Wow.
And
Wow.
it didn't make it, sadly. He had it for 12 years, which is a really respectable number for independent restaurants when they have to go up against these corporate chains.
Yeah.
But he had a very popular restaurant for a long period of time. I'm thankful he's out of it. But just from being the cook in the firehouse, he went on and formed his own company and became
Wow.
very well known throughout the state for his competitions. And
Well, that just shows that entrepreneurial itch, that bent, that internal desire that wants you to do it by yourself for yourself is in your gene pool somewhere.
it really is. All three of my kids are that way. My oldest son, and after he got out of the restaurant, he had gotten out of the fire service, unfortunately, because the restaurant was so demanding. But he had it for 12 years, and he still, in the back of his mind, thinks about maybe doing it again somewhere down the road. But he's got a great job now. He's a boom crane operator for one of the local lumber yards, and he's got a great thing going, and he's got a couple, 3 promotions. So I'm happy for him. My son Dan is vice president of my company now. I'm at an age where I'm not going to retire anytime soon, but I'm going to slow down. And Dan has been well groomed. He's been with me now 17 years. He will step in and take this over, and I'm thrilled to death about that. And then my daughter Megan, she's got the same entrepreneurial spirit. She's an esthetician by trade, and about 3 or 4 years ago, she opened her own spot.
Nice.
So all 3 of my kids have that entrepreneurial drive.
Awesome. So we're going to close out the firehouse portion of this podcast with what's the best firehouse story you got? Yeah, everybody's got that one that sticks in the back of their mind that says, "Oh my gosh, if you knew this and you didn't know anything about firefighters, you would need to hear this story because you won't believe it." And here we go.
The best stories. Wow. Number one, we don't sit around in our underwear playing checkers. All right. Let's kill that myth right off the bat.
Okay.
It's so hard right now to get firefighters that you're constantly doing everything. I mean, I use my state of Illinois as an example. 10 years ago, there was 28,000 fire department paramedics in Illinois. That number's down to 8,000 now.
Wow. Why is that?
The pay's not there. The demands of the job. You've got to, it used to be you were the guy that went in and slobbered the wet stuff on the red stuff. Now you've got to be the firefighter. You've got to be a hazardous material person. You got to be a medical person. You have to be a counselor. You have to be able to protect yourself in physical confrontations because with all the drugs and everything on the streets.
Oh yeah.
It's just such a demanding thing. And then government agencies that get involved are putting such ridiculous regulations on it that it's just for what you've got to go through to earn that title. Sadly, it's not worth it to these young people.
Yeah.
So,
The value.
but I guess the one thing is firefighters have an incredibly unique sense of humor. You're always teaching, but you're always, if you're a newbie or what we call the FNG, the friggin' new guy.
Yeah.
If you're the FNG, you're going to get messed with. It's automatic. And there's 2 reasons for that. Number one, you got to get into the family.
Yeah.
So they're going to mess with you to bring you into the family. But number 2, they're also messing with you to see what you can handle.
Where's the limit?
Yeah. Some guys just, you mess with them because you need to know if they've got a breaking point, because you need to know where that breaking point is. You don't want to be 200 feet deep into a burning building and a guy loses his composure on you.
Yeah.
Right. Because now you got to get him out and you out, and that's probably not going to happen.
Got to keep your wits about you.
Yeah. So a lot of guys, they mess with them just to find out how much they can handle. Can they handle the stress? Can they handle the pressure? Can they handle the harassment? So I think the one thing I remember the most was we were doing a class on auto extrication, cutting people out of damaged cars. And you don't cut the person out of the car. You cut the car away from the person. And so we had one of our young guys that we had put up in there, and he's laying down on the floor, and the guys had to get him out. So they cut the car away from him, and they get in with him and get him stabilized and secure him, and they put a backboard on him. Traffic accident, everybody gets a backboard usually because you don't know if they've got any spinal injuries. So you want to keep the spine straight. So they get him on a backboard, cervical collar, get him strapped down on the board, get him out of the car, set him down on the ground. And one of the older guys goes over to the truck, pulls what we call a booster hose, which is a small 1-inch rubber hose, stretches out the booster hose, has him prime the pump, and this poor kid's laying on the backboard completely strapped down, and they open the hose up and just soak him down real good. So I can still picture him laying on that board, fighting, trying to get loose. It was a summer day, but I'm sure that water was cold. So, but
Sounds like a Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Yeah, unique thing. And I mean, we took care of the kid. We bought him dinner afterwards, and it's a family. Yeah. You work together in this job, you live together, and sadly, on a few occasions, they die together. Yeah. And so you form a bond that's like nothing else. They really are a family.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, as you look back, you embraced and embarked on this path towards being an entrepreneur. And at some point you decided, hey, I need to take this skills, talents, gifts, abilities, and I need to put them to work, and I want to do it my way. And that started Sorensen Wilder and
Correct.
Sitka and etc.
Right.
Tell us about that voyage.
I've always, I think going back to my first Kool-Aid stand as a kid, I wanted to be an entrepreneur. When I left the healthcare system, no matter how good they were to me, I made a decision that day that I didn't ever want somebody to have that much control over my future.
Yeah.
I wanted to be able to put myself in a position where if I failed, I could talk to the guy in the mirror who failed.
Yeah.
If I succeeded, I could talk to the guy in the mirror who succeeded. But I wanted more control of my own destiny. And so and we started, you're right, we started with Sorensen Wilder and Associates, Chris Sorensen, my business partner. And Chris and I have been together. We started our careers at the hospital together in 1982, I think. And we've been together, over 40 years now. But we started
I hear
Sorensen
you're
Wilder.
married.
Huh?
I hear the two of you are almost married.
We've outlived most marriages. Yeah. We know how to argue. We know how to disagree. We know how to fight. But at the end of the day, we share the same values: family, employees, integrity. Those are all things we share.
Core values.
Yeah. As long as we share the same core values, we can argue and disagree all we want. We're not disagreeing on the value. We're just sometimes disagreeing on what road to take to get there.
Yeah. It's a brother. It's a brother. Yeah.
He really is. God bless me with two incredible sisters, no brothers. So yeah, Chris is my brother.
Right on.
And he knows I feel that way, and I know he feels the same.
Yeah. And you can punch him in the mouth and not go to jail.
He's a black belt in karate. I don't want to punch him in the mouth.
Oh, don't do that.
Don't do that. That's bad for my health. Yeah. And we used to teach a lot of self-defense classes when we were younger, and he was always the lead instructor. And he trained me very well how to fall properly.
Yeah.
And I was the tackling dummy. Yeah. So he'd be teaching how to do takedowns, and he'd be flipping me over his shoulder, over his back, and everything else. And I was young and virile, and had no problem with it. But
today it'd be a hip. Learned how to take a punch.
Today it'd be a hip fracture. We started Sorensen Wilder and Associates, and that took off pretty well. Slow starting, but again, I had a nice severance package from the healthcare system. So, the first 6 or 8 months I was whole anyway, and with healthcare benefits and salary. So, that gave us a chance to get going. And then a couple projects came in, and that gave us a little bit of bankroll. And then jobs just started coming in. Word of mouth got out. We never advertised. At that point in time, primarily everything we were doing was healthcare related, because that was really the only thing we knew. So we were doing a lot of healthcare work, doing security threat assessments, mock OSHA audits, all that kind of stuff. And in 2004, we got a request from a company in Central Illinois that was a tower erection company. And a guy very well by the name of Bill Vance, or knew very well. Bill's gone now, unfortunately. But Bill was vice president of this company, and Bill asked us to come in and do a safety audit for them. And we did. And the owner of the company liked what we did and said, guys, there's just not a lot of companies at this time doing what you guys are doing. And I think we could really do something good with the telecommunications industry.
There you go.
And so, working with Bill, we formed a company called CITCA. At that time, CITCA stood for the Communications Industry Training and Certification Academy. And we built it on the academy concept, kind of mimicking the way we had things structured at the Fire Academy, where students would come in, they'd attend trainings, you'd offer certification courses, you got your certifications accredited so they'd be recognized. And then students could go back. Well, the company took off pretty well. Unfortunately, the marriage between our third partner, who became our third partner, it was not a good marriage. So after 5 years, and by then CITCA was up and running,
Sure.
After 5 years, Chris and I bought his interest in CITCA out, and it's been ours ever since.
Right on.
We also, a year after that, formed a third company, all under the same LLC umbrella, called Midwest Integrated Solutions. And Chris runs that. And everybody thinks Chris is a silent partner. He's really not. But I run Sorensen Wilder, I run CITCA, Chris runs Midwest Integrated Solutions. And we each own 50% of all three operating units. And Midwest Integrated Solutions is a security systems integrator. They sell and install security systems. And we're like I said, about 45 miles south of Chicago, so they're in about a 4 or 5 state region. They're in Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin, Michigan, Iowa. So that company's
Yeah. Hey, being south of Chicago, you need a lot of security. Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of that, I have noticed that out in the marketplace, you also do some active. Yeah. Coming from a Vikings fan, you could just throw that water bottle away, please.
yeah, I get it.
85 Bears, I got it. Yeah, the only Cleveland fan.
Let them go. That was 35, 40 years ago. My
I know,
goodness.
right?
Chicago can't let go of that.
But you have Justin Fielder, so it's good revenge. Anyway, you're doing active shooter scenarios and active shooter training and things like that. What was the genesis of that? That's pretty fascinating stuff because now you're talking about pretty high intensity, high response. I mean, high response demands, low response times. It's pretty intense.
It really is. We got into that back in 2014. One of the network partners that Sorensen Wilder and Associates has is a company by the name of Pendulum out of Albuquerque in New Mexico, and run by a gentleman by the name of Rick Henry. And we had set up a relationship with Rick a few years earlier, and he is a healthcare risk management defense consulting firm, not an attorney, but they focus on setting up good risk management programs from a defensibility point of view. And he was having some issues, some security issues in some of his client locations. And they didn't get involved in anything with safety or security or OSHA or anything like that. And somebody introduced us, and we set up a relationship and started working with them. Still to this day, we do a lot of work with Pendulum. But a couple of years after that, Rick reached out to me and asked me. He said that one of the insurance companies that he worked with had had a loss because of an active shooter environment, and had reached out to him if he could set up an active shooter response program and training program. He asked us to do it. We put the first generation of it together and went out to Albuquerque and did it. And it just so happened that there was a guy in the audience who had recently retired from Philadelphia PD.
Wow.
His wife was a nursing home administrator in Pennsylvania, and she had gone out to Albuquerque for the conference, and he just tagged along. And he came up afterward and he said, "Guys, that's a great program." He said, "I spent a lot of time as a tactical officer and a SWAT officer. I got some ideas to strengthen the program." And he said, "If you'd let me take a shot at it, I'll show you what I mean."
Nice.
We just connected with the guy. And long story short, Jim Mininger is his name. Jim revised the program, added some really good stuff. And we ended up hiring him part-time to be an instructor because he was such a good instructor. He had so much experience, and he had the personality for it. He didn't have I have to be careful with this because I'm such a big fan of law enforcement. But he didn't have that tough guy cop image.
Yeah.
He was a people person.
Yeah, there you go.
He was such a great instructor. Yeah. And so we started doing that program, Jimmy's version of it, and teaching it at different conferences. And all of a sudden, word just took off. And, here we are. That was in 2014, 9 years later, almost 10 years now this summer. It's the number one program in our product line because this active shooter stuff is not going away.
No, it's not. And as I look at you, I see someone who's chosen. I've chosen to manage risk. I've chosen to run into burning buildings. I've chosen to teach how to people how to, respond in an active shooter situation. This is all high risk, relatively low monetary reward, but high people reward.
Reward.
These are high service areas, man.
I've actually had a couple calls over the years from people who have gone through our active shooter training program and then been in an event and called up afterwards to say, I needed to tell you that your training saved our lives.
Wow.
And there's not a deposit slip in the world worth that.
Boy, what a dividend that is,
You
bro.
know, yeah, they're going to have Christmas with their family this year because of what you taught them.
Yeah,
I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it, Jim.
that's
Yeah, it's not always a monetary thing. It's a mission thing.
well, and we talk, when I got to tell you, when Grandpa chats with champions, you know what happens? We find out stuff that you wouldn't ordinarily hear, and these are the kind of things that actually impact people. Because if you didn't know that you needed an active shooter course in your school, in your hospital, in your corporate environment, now you know it actually does happen. And the guys who are prepared to run at bad guys, those are our friends, and we need to either be a sheep or be a sheepdog. Pick one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And having done so much active shooter training across the country now, I've met so many people who have been involved in situations. Um, One of my nearest and dearest friends, and I've had the privilege now of lecturing with him multiple times in different parts of the nation, is a guy by the name of Frank DeAngelis.
Mm,
Frank was the principal at Columbine High School.
wow.
And I met Frank at a conference a number of years ago, and we connected. And like I said, we've done programs all over the country. He stayed in my home, and we start every active shooter program out with a video I shot of Frank. And it's just a simple 2.5 minute video called Any Given Day.
Yeah.
And he says right up, if you'd have asked me if a Columbine could happen at Columbine, I'd have said no way. And he
Yeah.
talks about their graduation rates, their college placement rates, and all that. And then it happened in this high class, and there's 6 high schools in Middleton, Colorado. And Columbine was like way up here in the echelon of class. I mean, very
Yeah.
high class
Suburban
school.
Denver.
Yeah, exactly. And it happened, and it changed his life forever. Met another woman in one of my programs who was actually in a beauty shop in Wisconsin a number of years ago, when in beauty shop, the owner's ex-husband, or excuse me, the beautician's ex-husband came in, locked the door, and proceeded to execute his wife and 3 or 4
Mm,
other patrons of the business. Literally had Betty laying on the floor with a gun to the back of her head, going to execute her, when he saw the police pull up in front. He walked up to see how many police there were, saw the number of them, and shot himself instead. So I know her well, and hearing her story and letting her talk about it. The I had a 19-year-old girl who was in the baggage claim area at Fort Lauderdale Airport in 2017 when they had the active shooter in the baggage claim area.
yeah.
And she told me this guy was on the plane in front of us. He was fine. He was pleasant. Got off the plane, got his luggage out of baggage claim, went in the bathroom, loaded his gun up, came out and just started shooting people. She hid underneath one of the rows of seats down there in the baggage claim area. Said he literally pointed the gun at her, pulled the trigger, but it misfired. And he
Wow.
stepped outside, cleared the jam, walked back in. If he'd have turned right, he'd walk back over to her. He turned left and went down the opposite direction, shot some
Yeah.
more people, and then just sat down on the floor and waited for the police to get there. So, I've talked to these people, and I realized that, yeah, a paycheck is nice, a dividend check is nice or whatever, but making a difference in people's lives is what, whether it's fire service or whatever, you're doing something to help somebody's life be better.
And Steve, that's what makes you a champion.
No,
So,
thank you.
number one, thanks for joining us. But number two, before we let you go, you're also a grandpa and a great grandpa,
I
which
am
is one of the things that I mean, people look at people like you and me, and they think, "Hey, man, not only are they past their prime, they are they're circling the drain."
Oh no,
Why
no.
aren't we circling the drain? Inspire these people. Tell us about that workout day.
It's okay to age, but you don't have to get old.
Yeah.
And there's a sign in my gym, and I try and gym. I go to the gym 6 days a week. Sunday's my day off. Sunday is a day to restore some sleep,
Yeah.
which is important for your health.
Yeah. Rest.
So catch up on some sleep, go to church, and watch football, knowing the Bears aren't going to be there. But yeah, Monday through Saturday is starts every morning at the gym at 5 o'clock. And there's a sign in the gym, as I sort of say, it says, you don't stop lifting because you get old. You get old because you stop lifting.
Yeah, there you go.
And I've been a weightlifting enthusiast since early days on the fire department. We had some weights at the station. I love that. Then as my boys got older, we started going to the gym together in the evenings. And it's just always been a big part of me. So it changes. I can't lift as much weight as I once could, but you lift half the weights and go less weight, more repetitions. It's better on the joints that way. And it keeps my mobility up. And I still play racquetball 3 days a week.
Nice. I love racquetball.
Yeah.
Right, I want you on the court.
Come on down, baby. Bring it. Bring it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, from these grandpas, I just want to let our audience know that we might not be world-class athletes anymore or anything like that. But what we can do is inspire you to keep moving, because if you stop moving, they're going to plant you in the dirt pretty quick.
And it's so cool. My mom lived to 97 years old, and she lived in her home up to the day she died, never in a nursing home, never needed anything. And she always said, Steve, my doctor always told me, keep moving. And she was right. Got to keep moving. Keep those joints working. Keep those muscles working. You don't have to go to the weight room. That's my thing. But walk on a treadmill, ride an exercise bike, walk the neighborhood. Keep moving. Keep your cardiac going.
Walk your dog.
Yeah, walk your dog. Exactly, Jim. So, yeah.
Well, Wilder, thank you, man. You've been a great guest. We are saluting you for your service to your community, to the firehouse, to the hospital people, to everybody in an active shooter that you've trained. Any words of wisdom you have to close this out for our Grampian Nation?
Number one, I will accept your kind words as long as you allow me to accept them on behalf of everybody who does these things.
All right.
All right. There are so many good people out there. The media don't want to talk about them. But there are so many good people out there trying to do things to make their communities better, to make their home life better, to make themselves better. And just don't give up. You're not going to have a bad day. You'll have some days better than others, but you'll never have a bad day.
All right.
So don't give it up.
Awesome. Well, Grampian Nation, be like Steve. You too can be a mentor. You can be a coach. You can be excellent. You can be elite at something. It doesn't take much to be a champion, just a little more. And we want to thank Steve Wilder for coming on air. And we want to thank you, Grampian Nation. Tune back again at YouTube or Spotify or thegrampian.com. But don't forget to subscribe. We need that. Take care now. This is Jim and I.
Stay safe, everyone.
When you get an opportunity, subscribe or follow wherever you get your podcast.